Make sure everybody's on with us. Everybody can see us all right. Prayerfully so. Can you guys see and hear me all right on TikTok? Yes, no, maybe so. Signal all right? Actually, give me a second. I'm going to pause. Don't answer that. Give me a second. Hold on. I'm going to pause. Hold on 1 second. Okay. Let's try that again. I'm trying it again. Can you guys see and hear me all right? Everything's straight? You can hear me? Yes, no, maybe so. Posible? All right. Great, great, great. Shalom, shalom. Also, too, where are we at? Where are we at? Sorry. Oh yeah, parents. I didn't put it up yet. We do have, don't forget we've been having French class and Spanish class as well as Kung Fu. Kung Fu, I put something up there for the children that miss that they can use or you can use for some exercise. I didn't realize how early they start school back, so they might already have these children back in school, but we'll keep everything going for a little bit to see if everybody's actually able to make what it is, because I don't recall when I was going to school, us coming back, at the, this early into August. If anything, you would go back to school the end of August. But they got these babies going back extremely early, so just, but we'll keep that stuff going. I have a recording up there. Hey, how you doing?
Grand Rising.
Grand Rising. What's up? So, so we have recording of those things on there. If you guys are looking for it for the children, so their stuff should be on there. Also, Spanish class yesterday recorded on there. Nobody has access to it, of course, except the adults that are the parents of the children or the children themselves. It should be coming through that text train that we have. So, if you guys are looking for it, you just let us know. All right, and you should be able to find it there. Or if you need it, we'll have to have conversation with you and talk to you and actually look at you, because by law, when it comes to any homeschooling stuff, state by state, we have to make sure to be protected. So just in case some of you guys use those things for your homeschooling, we have to, by law, make sure that we actually, everything's set up correctly. So if you guys are, so when you're looking for that stuff, just look for, appreciate you. Thank you. So by law, we have to make sure we're looking out for them. So that's why we go through all that extra stuff. So for the babies, we have to, by law, we can't just, so by law, we have to make sure that we do that for the babies. That's why we ask when the babies come on their stuff, we say, can we see your pic, your video, all that stuff. We have to make sure that we see the children on there, just by law, to protect them, to protect the parents, to protect us if anybody's using this stuff for, which we don't mind, of course. That's kind of what we do. We can't officially say that's what it's for, but that's kind of what we do, is to help you guys along the way with, what you're doing to teach the children. So if you can just do that when you come on, but also remember that if you're asking for stuff, what we can share, you guys have seen us put in certain places, but I have to put it in places like Patreon and stuff like that. It still has to be secure to a certain degree. Alrighty? Okay. So but we're finishing up today. We're continuing to finish up Barashayat Navan, Barashayat Nun. And hopefully you guys are ready. Thank you for any likes, shares, subscription, hit the notification tab, all that great stuff. Those who donate time, talent, effort, energy, and yes, even those of you who give money, because we do need financial help to do what we're doing around the world, around the country, et cetera, or the corporation, right? So, we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you all. We've been started, but we'll get started with the actual finishing up. So that's all that stuff. Don't forget to, you should be looking up, or just getting in contact with us if for some reason you're not finding the link, just to go on that part 2 question. Anybody's question about that part 2 for like Future Tabernacles, all that stuff, just reach out. You know what I'm saying? Just reach out and let us know you want the link, all that stuff, or look at the link tree. Right, the link tree, all that stuff is there to contact us, connect with us, text us, etc., etc. Don't forget Sister Renee right now. She's taking a little hiatus from secretary duties right now. So just contact me direct, right? Or the minister or the staff that's in your area, the person that makes phone calls, whatever the case might be, they should be able to have access to all this stuff or point you in the right direction, right? So even without the secretary, we still have set things in place where we should be able to get that. And eventually, maybe we'll look at getting somebody up. But right now, Sister Renee is taking a little hiatus, as we said. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and finish up. We didn't do our Bible pledge yet. That's my fault. We'll do that as well, and then we'll jump in. Let's see. So, shalom, peace. Once again, mic check. I know TikTok, you guys said you can hear all right. I just want to make sure. YouTube, can you hear all right? Facebook, can you hear all right? Just let me know. But we'll go ahead and get started. And peace to everybody. Shalom, peace, peace, peace. Hope you're doing well. Right? Hope you're in agreement with where your day is supposed to go. Ashe, so to speak. Ashe and Zuri. Agree with the greatness of your life. Alrighty, but let's go ahead and get started. May the words of our mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect His message of mine. We're going to go ahead and say our Bible pledge and jump right in. We already did all the announcements and answered some questions as far as that. Just to let you know, we're in Barashayat 9, right? Genesis chapter 50, so to speak. So we're finishing up today. Tomorrow is brief because we have our podcast tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll do like an hour and a half session of just kind of an overview. And then Sunday and Monday, we'll make sure that we do kind of a Q&A, but not a regular Q&A. This Q&A will just be what we've been talking about the last 6 months for those that have been with us. Okay? So we've been doing this since February 7th. So it's been something that, pretty much every day of our lives, except for maybe out of it, outside of our days off, so outside of like four, so if you take out, I guess, maybe 3 weeks, something like that at the most, maybe 4, out of that month, everything has been, or out of this 6-month period, half a year, everything has just been Barashayat, outside of other things we teach. So this coming to a close is somewhat bittersweet, but we've been learning a lot about culture. We've been learning about where we come from. We've been learning about how to utilize this stuff, not just say that we believe it, but then not execute, right? Execution is extremely important, right? So to say that I have faith in something but have no works to back it up is crazy work, right? But we've been taught to do that, so we've been teaching against that. Make sure we have Barashayat, we have in beginning. That's what Barashayat means, setting it up from the beginning. And so we're hitting Barashayat 50, right? Barashayat none, Barashayat Genesis chapter 50 today. And we should be finishing up with that. And so prayerfully you guys are ready. And then, like I said, tomorrow we'll do like a little overview. And on Sunday and Monday, prayerfully you guys will have some stuff together. We'll do Q&A, but not our regular Q&A. It'll just be Q&A specifically for what we're talking about the last 6 months. So you can let everybody know. Share that with your friend, family. I'll try to make an announcement about it. Send it out via email on through this weekend and Sunday and Monday. But prayerfully we'll see you guys there for that. Also, too, my wife and I, we're going to be doing marital sessions. It's the second Saturday of the month, so we'll be doing marital session again this Saturday. Tomorrow, I believe it's 7 p.m. New York time. And if we're able to, we'll try to do Sunday about 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. New York time as well on Zoom. So we'll do it live tomorrow. We'll do it on Zoom. If it all works well, we'll do it on Zoom late Sunday, because I know Sunday is family day. So we'll see how that works out. So let's get ready for our Bible pledge, and then let's say shalom, peace, everybody, hello, greetings, etc. Hola, bonjour, right? Ça va? Salutations, greetings, grand rising, shalom, shalom, right? To everybody, appreciate you. Namaste, all that stuff, ciao, aloha. Let's go ahead and get into it. So how you doing? Minister Tracy, Sister Beck, Sister Carla, Keith, Money Green, Imperium, Appear to Figo, even though it looks like you already did something, somebody had to take you off. Appreciate your presence nonetheless. Sister Mavis, everybody on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, if you're coming over from the podcast, appreciate you. If you're watching this later on or live, how you doing, Brother Cole? Thank y'all for the love once again. Thank you for like, shares. If you subscribe, hit the notification tab as well. We appreciate everybody on here today. Let's see, Sister Deborah, Bawan, Audrey, Sister Mignon, Sister Joy, Shalom Bat, Sister Shirley, Tabitha, It's Cake, Malaya, Dorshell, Mason, Lamar, or Yachasaf, right? Yachasaf. Dennis, Aaron, Koba. Hopefully you're doing well, feeling well. Dorian Gray, Naguto, El Efecto, Makia, Bonita. If I'm missing anybody on any platform, shout it to my head, not to my heart. We appreciate you. How you doing, Suri? Or Suri Daya? I'm not sure if I'm even in the ballpark for saying that correct. How you doing, Dion? How you doing, Bam, Jenny, Ayando, Orlando, Lando. User 96217, etc. Tuki, Starnes. I think I said Minister Tracy already. Dre, Nora. Yep, that's Lenora down in Florida. Shalom, peace. Always good to have you on. How you doing, Beulah, Manny, Dundada? All right, Miracle. And if I missed anybody, once again, forgive me. I'm be honest. I think I saw that you did text, but I didn't get a chance to check it out yet. I'm also going to be trying to send something to you as well, but I didn't get a chance to see it. That you've been, you and some other persons having in my heart. But I didn't. I was behind on a lot of texts. To be honest, a lot of stuff I'm just seeing this rising, so I got to go through a bunch of it. So I apologize, and I was running late even with that. So y'all saw even with the stuff I'm reading, right? So I'm trying to get back into the thing, but I'm gonna check it. I didn't get a chance to really look through it. I saw pieces of it, but I didn't get a chance to look at it. So I promise I'll look at it today. I promise. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. How you doing, Reginald? Everybody on here? So we'll say our Bible pledge. If you want to put your right hand in the air, or your device in the air, or your Bible in the air, just repeat after me. We'll go ahead and get into this. This is my Bible. This is my sword. And this will I trust. For your Chashvai is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is Yahshua. His name is authority. Let it be done unto us. You may be seated to go back to what you were doing in Yah's presence. So Genesis 50, Barashayat, none. We've talked about pretty much everything on here. Today's not going to be a review, and I may be in it a little early so I can talk a little bit before I leave here and get some stuff done today. So, but we're going to get through the rest of Genesis today. So we'll officially be done all the verses. Tomorrow we'll come back and do a nice little overview. And the day after that, like I said, next 2 days on Sunday and Monday, we'll do a Q&A specific just to Barashayat. So when we go to Barashayat none, which is Genesis 50. If you guys remember Navan Qasar, if you guys know or about Nero Caesar, right? Remember 603 score and 6 names have numbers of 616 in the Greek. Right, characters. So if you recall that, even if you haven't gone through our classes, you should recall that we have that none means 50, right? And if you guys recall who take the classes and the ones that we put up lately, remember that 1 and 4, 14, if you just put a 0 behind it and you add like the first two, you get the numerology too. So if none is 50, right, it's the 14th character. Remember 1 plus 4 is 5, put a 0 on it, is 50. So if you recall, that's what from what we did with that session, we were teaching on that, but we're dealing with none, which is 50. Now 50 is important for you to catch as well. Why is 50 important for us to catch? Anybody recall? As far as culture, as far as origin, salvaging, getting back to the original, or salve, if somebody wants to say that, getting back to the original intent, not just rescuing or being saved for the sake of being rescued. There you go. So Jubilee, right, happens at 50. So that's extremely important. Now what happens in Jubilee? Culturally, I'm not talking about all the stuff that people say, blah, blah, well, 50's the new dit. No. What happens at 50 culturally? Right? What's one of the reasons why it's important? Jubilee, so celebration, all that. But why is it important too? Which is something that actually is lawful, but you have to know. Now, this is not necessarily in all areas. I'm not going to act like this is in all areas, but this is something that will really cleanse your books, or something that persons look at every 50 years is something they do. So celebration of release, right? I see what you're doing there, right? How you doing, Sister Dawn? Right? So, come on, moderators, praise God. How you doing, Michael? And Rimple, who was doing whatever. Thank you, moderators. I see. So, and how you doing, Sister Greta? So, when we're talking about 50, you're released. So there is, when people say all this stuff about slavery in the Bible, you have to be careful, because remember, first of all, there's no word of Slav, because there's not even a Slavic people yet. So, that's why we say you have to go back to original language. This word you're using, the slave, there are no slaves in Israel. Now, there were Israelites who were slaves, but there are no slaves who were Israel. Or Israel's not supposed to have slaves. If they do, or they try to, there's measures in place, right? So every 3 years, there's supposed to be laws in the books that would say somebody has to go back, because we're only supposed to have indentured servitude, and indentured servitude is not exactly what it was back, what we think it is. Indentured servitude is kind of sort of like you having a job today. So, but except if somebody came in, let's say, let's use this term servants, right? Or we would say, what do we have? Kings, lords, freedmen, and before you get to slave, you have serfs, right? So let's say you're a servant or a serf. A serf is different. Like in Russia, serfs are basically slaves. Just your next generation will have to be a slave, but slaves, they can't get out of it, right? Until Catherine the Great or somebody like, yeah, Catherine the Great came and forced everybody, including even the clergy, to become serfs and therefore become slaves. But in most cultures, a serf is an indentured servant, right? An indentured servant or a servant is one where an Israelite is supposed to make sure that you take them in. So, for example, Abraham had a house even before he had a son. What do I mean? Remember that word in Hebrew, bet, or house? It means family, right? So remember that, and I'm sorry. Oh, okay. How you doing? So remember Abraham's house. He had a house. He had a family, but he didn't have a son yet. How do you have a family but you don't have a son? Well, remember he had so many family members that literally he had generations that went to fight with him against Canaan when he went to save Lot, who he raised like a son, but Lot is really his nephew, right? So he had no son, but he got all his family. Now, how does he have this family? Because servants were supposed to be in your house. The word house, once again, doubles for the word family. So when you hear something like, as for me and my house, we shall serve the Lord, it means as for me and my family. It's not just only the brick and mortar, right? It's the family, right? The family is more important than the brick and mortar. It's nationality, it's law, right? Like, wherever your foot treads belongs to Yah. Why? Because you're supposed to be his servant. If you in private identify as a servant, then wherever you go, that has to be protected because of who you serve, right? So you can be in the world but not of it, or you can be in the public but not of it. The same thought process, right? So you have these persons who serve Lot. Now, anybody who serves him, especially if they decide they want to live with him, he's responsible not only for them, but this is how it works. And by the way, even for y'all, we don't believe this, but even for y'all trying to have multiple wives and stuff, well, y'all gotta get your stuff together because your culture's wrong. Guess what? Abraham is supposed to provide not only for the servant, he got to take care of their house while they work for him. So he has to be able to take care of their family. He has to be able to take care of their physical house. He has to show them his business. And some of them become so much into the stuff they marry into the family. They have a choice. Do they want to marry into your family? Or do they want to, at the end of the contract, say, okay, thank you so much. I learned, you took care of me, you paid me. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back and I'm going to try and take what you taught me and do something with it. So a lot of cats, they see these words because of chattel slavery, because of also, too, do some research. Matter of fact, we're not too far from D.C. Some of you guys came with us and we went to the Bible Museum in D.C., right back in, what was that, May? And when we went there, hopefully some of you caught the slave Bible and actually looked at it, right? Or if you ever get a chance to go to Thomas Jefferson's house called Monticello, when you go there, you'll see slave Bible, and you'll see on the shelf, and they'll try to be nice about it. They'll try to be, oh, well, he didn't agree with stuff and blah, blah, but you'll see a Bible in there, and it's really skinny, even skinnier than the slave Bible. And he would rip pages out, anything that said, treat your slaves, this word they put in there, treat them with respect and all this stuff, because that's also talking about indentured servitude. He would rip it out because he didn't want to hear it. And remember, Nat Turner. Why did Nat Turner actually start fighting? He got his hands on the actual Bible, and he learned about Moses and other cats, and judges who were fighting, and Deborah and all of them who would fight. He said, oh, and he said, I'm supposed to be Moses. And then he gathered all the person together, or you saw Levator, 18 in Haiti. Guess what he did? He was out there, he was by himself. Next thing you know, he gets his hands on the Bible, he reads the Bible, not the slave Bible, but the actual Bible. Goes, oh, maybe I'm supposed to be Moses. Who do we call Harriet Tubman? Somebody who read the Bible and go, oh, okay, I'm going to let my people go. And she became so great. Don't forget, she didn't just do the Underground Railroad. She was so great, in fact, that she literally was, they will never give her this official title, but if you do your research, she actually fought with the Union. She would be over the soldiers like she was a general. They would go in and they would actually free slaves and bring them out. So this whole thing of she's freed 200 or something, that's low. Right, whatever this movie, I didn't see the movie, but whatever the new movie is with the girl from England that don't even like us like that, but whatever, that movie too, those numbers are too low. She was freeing us by the hundreds, by the thousands. So that's why we call her Black Moses. Not just because. Matter of fact, if you go to her, hey, how you doing, babe? My wife is on the Honorable Alma. Love you. Thanks for being on. Right? Feel free to once again share it. Follow her on new TikTok channel, not the old one. New TikTok channel, Blue and First Maya Foot. Right? But Harriet Tubman, and thank you, babe, once again, love you. She was so great at what she did that after she got out of it and retired somewhat, she got her land together, yes. So land is important even back then. She said, I can't just do all this stuff with no land. She went and got a whole bunch of land in 2 different spots. Right? The main spot I've been to is the one near Harper's Ferry. I haven't been to the other one that's supposed to be in Jersey or whatever that is. But she had this land, and she literally, whether you were black, white, or otherwise, if you couldn't find a place to stay or you needed medical help, she made sure that you had a hospital. She made sure that there were hotels or something like hotels, but it was free. And you could live there and get yourself on your feet. So all these persons, they open up. Remember, Oluwadah Equiano, if you don't know that name, that's an important name. He was a slave that was taken from West Africa. He comes over. He forgets who he is because it was taken when he was younger. And kind of also, too, he had trauma. So he forgot all the stuff before he was a slave. He got to be 20 years old. He purchases his own freedom by being a sailor. He was a sailor, but he was a slave as a sailor. Purchases his own freedom. Ends up getting his own house, doing really well. Then he finally says, you know what, I heard about this Bible thing. Let me read it. He reads it. He says, wait a minute. The stuff they're saying in there, that's what we do back home. We don't mix honey with the milk. We don't wear things of multiple fabrics. We blah, blah. And then he started reading. Then his language started coming back to him. Then he said, well, I read it. He said, oh, wait a minute. I think I was an Israelite. Then he says, eventually he writes his book. And he says, yeah, I was an Israelite. Right? So persons who say this stuff don't know what Negroes are, don't know nationality, don't know why they make this stuff illegal and stuff. There's reason behind it. Even if you want to go deeper, look at 2nd Esther chapter 13. Now this is, you got to go out to your side of 66 books. But remember, this book was actually in your King James version before they started taking it out. So remember, the King James version used to be at least 80 books. Right? So even Roman Catholics have, when you look at their Bible, they have the 80 books still. So this used to be in your books. Right? But it got taken out with the slave Bible. That being said, not with Constantine. Y'all going back too far. This is recent. In the slave Bible, they took out those 14 books, right? And then some. But that being said, when you read those, right, when you read 2nd Esther, it mentions something called the land of Asherah. Do your research. Matter of fact, there's a movie. The guy played, the Spanish guy, I forget his name all the time. He had a big old nose. No, thank you. I appreciate it. He, from back in the day, he used to be popular back in the day. But anyways, he got like a little prick in his nose or whatever. There was a movie called 1492. 1492. When you go, or read the book, but when you go watch the movie, you'll see them even in there talking about the land of Asherah. Do your research. That was what they considered to be 80. But the Bible said that there were Israelites that left, right? In 2nd Esther, it says this, chapter 13, verses 40 through 45. They left looking for the land of Asherah. In other words, they were looking for a land that was not inhabited. And they were trying to get themselves together because they kept messing up with the law, being involved with everybody else. They said, let's go somewhere on our own. Now, whether you believe they went on the Bering Strait, whether you believe they went to West Africa and they used the currents to get over, but Christopher Columbus, in his journals going back at least to 1482, we know that he was traveling with East Africans, West Africans on ships, and they kept telling about the current and about these Israelites supposedly that were over there. So guess what he does? It's in his journal, in his son's journal too. And remember, they had to take a Hebrew interpreter with them over. So they took a Hebrew interpreter over to these islands. And the Hebrew interpreter and all of them get to the islands, and guess what they do? They have a conversation. They tell them, yeah, we're familiar with all this stuff. We know who you guys are, all this stuff. Right? And how you doing, Sister Taylor? Thank y'all for sharing. Thank you, baby, for sharing. Right? So all this stuff is right there, literally, in journals. Now, also, too, look at, what's his name? Dr. Ivan von Sertima. Check him out, too. And read his books. Right? Especially his books on how women were treated. He has books on how men were treated, how women were treated, the history of us as people. You'd be surprised, right? Or look at even, this is somebody else, but Dr. Who's the name of the guy who wrote The Miseducation of the American Negro? Somebody help me out, I'm forgetting his name. Doctor, and I shouldn't. That's like, if anything, if you're talking about learning black history, so to speak, then that should be your genesis. Really, the Bible should be your genesis, but people want to counter the stuff. What's my man's name? Who wrote The Miseducation of the American Negro? How you doing, brother Jermaine? I can't remember his name right now. Matter of fact, let me just look it up. How you doing, Sister Snap? And I'm gonna get back to you with the stuff that you texted about. I got you, and thank you for your help. Um, Thank you, Dr. Carter G. Woodson. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. Dr. Carter G. Woodson in The Miseducation of the American Negro. He also has a lot of other books, including about black men, black women. We only talk about that one, but he has a lot of them. Also, too, but the main one I'm talking about is look up the history of the black church. Now, even though I'm not into the whole black church thing, right? Because even though I agree with some of what they believe, but I'm not necessarily in the black church per se, right? That being said, when he talks, he has a whole book telling you about our culture, why the black church was so important and integral, right? If you go to New York, for example, when you go to the park, uh, right next to the water, gosh, I'm having a moment today. Y'all forgive me. My mind, I'm still waking up today. It was a long couple of days. But, no, right, the famous jump where Trump dealt with the 5 boys, they said that they were guilty and stuff, and they all ended up being innocent. Let me look it up. No. The park, Central Park. Yeah. Central Park. If you go to Central Park used to be what? Seneca Falls, right? And Seneca Falls, black church was important. Why? Because that was the center. Back then, it was the center. Why? Because we did something as a community. We made sure we came there. You got your education there. You got jobs through there. We made sure everybody eats. These are things that are important. Nowadays, it's just like, hey, let's go somewhere and let's meet up and let's play some music. And the water that's next to it, that's the river. That's a black river that was flooded, as so many have been, right? So you had 2 of them right there, and really, some would even say that one might have been black, because remember we just say everybody's black, but they might have been native, so-called native black, right? Or black native, so to speak. We know what but they would have been actual Americans, not a color person indigenous to the Americans. So a lot of this stuff is right there before us, and we have to get back to our culture. So when I speak on this stuff, that's why I speak so much about our story. I know his story. So one thing you should learn his story about you, because he be lying, but he be telling the truth. But then you should learn your story. You should be able to, elocute that in the same fashion, if not greater, right, than what you are through somebody else's prison. So it's important. So as we get through Genesis 50, this is the last chapter. It's important that we keep that in our head today. That all the stuff we've been talking about, and once again, if it's your first time listening today, we've been going through this since February 7th. It's a long series. We got it all recorded on YouTube. We have most of it recorded on Facebook. We have a whole bunch of it recorded on our podcast. So there's places you can go, you can listen, you can take notes. You can copy and paste things to get more thought process. But it is important that you recognize the story of this stuff, including, remember yesterday when we talked about Genesis 49, right? We know that there's blessings that come with being Israel or being in the kingdom of heaven. That being said, 49 yesterday is not about blessings. It's a warning about what's going to happen when, in the last days. Israel warns his children. He first blesses Joseph, and he blesses Ephraim and Manasseh, and he blesses them extremely so in front of everybody else. Why? Because Joseph was taken away from him. So he didn't have the Israelite experience that he should have had. And his 2 sons never knew anything about Israel outside of whatever their father might have told them. So he says that I want these 2 boys to be adopted in. He readopts Joseph into a place that was lost through his supposed death, right? Just like lawfully, we have to get to a place where we can be readopted into at least the private, right? Into where we are adopted into a place of freedom. Because even when we talk about all this stuff, look, I'm not going to hold you. Y'all know we try to develop the land. We trying to make sure we get our food together, all that. I ain't going to hold you on that. We're trying to get our culture back, yes. But also, too, one of the reasons you do it is because you get to a place of sovereignty, so-called sovereignty, because of what? Because of freedom, right? You're not going to have free will if you can't be about anybody's will except the beast, or what you want to call it, the government, you want to call it the corporation. If you can't have free will when your will is up, right? Let thy will be done. You can't let is allowed. If you ain't allowed to be in your Father's will, if that's what you believe, that's what we believe here today, right? So those who are coming on, whether you agree with this part or not, as far as religion, so to speak, I still want you to hear what I'm saying, the context of it, the precept, right? Even you can't be about free will if you can't do anything outside of somebody else's will. Even the word father, Abba, means source. So if your source is the United States Corporation, you're only able to do what's in that father's will. So George Washington, for many of you, is your father. Right? By the way, religiously, remember we did the thing where we went down to DC, we took our walk. I still got to redo the video for those on Patreon. But remember we went down, we did the walk, and I sat there, and I was on National Mall, and I was showing you this and showing you that about this rebuild and this, blah, blah. I remember we showed you right there on the mall. Now we know the mall goes past, it goes to the Lincoln Memorial too, right? On the reflective tour, we told you about like even the same place I showed you in Memphis, Tennessee, that's the same thing, all that too. But when you look in the mall just from the monument, George Washington Monument to the Congress building, yeah, to the Congress building, right? Yeah. Or the Capitol, right? Capitol building, Capitol building, when you look from there, I always want to call it the Congress building. So when you look from the George Washington Monument to the Capitol building, you see what? You see George Washington. What is that called there? I'm just trying to show you. We're going to finish in this 50. I'm trying to give you the foundation, right? So it's taken me a long time to do, granted, but I'm giving you a foundation. Remember, we have a monument there for George Washington. What is that monument called? Not just called the George Washington Monument, I'm talking about the shape of it, or what it is, or what it was originally in Kemet. What would you call that? What? Mm-hmm. And how you doing, Jasir? Thanks for being a part of the community. How you doing, Cam? Thanks for being a part of the community. Right? What would you call that thing when we were there? It's an obelisk. It's an obelisk, right? Now, what is an obelisk? See, because we don't know what this stuff is. So you think separation of church and state and freedom of religion and all this, and you don't realize religion, once again, means a legion of persons that repetitively do the same thing. And we're doing the same thing under the same jurisdiction. Oh, you close, you close. There's different ways to spell stuff too, so don't trip. As long as you got the mindset, I ain't worried about spelling. This ain't a spelling test. I want you to get the mindset, right? That's great that you recalled, right? So you have an obelisk, right? An obelisk, thank you, is a phallus, right? We're trying to be nice, you know what it is. It's a phallus, okay? If you don't know what a phallus is, I'm trying to be nice on social media and not get in trouble. So if you don't know what a F-A-L-L-U-S is, look it up, all right? But it's what men have and women don't have. Okay, so you have a phallus. Now, why is a phallus there? Now, watch this. Not only that, a big one. A big white one. Now, why is the phallus there? We're going to get to that in a second. Now, watch this. On the opposite end, so that's on this end. On the opposite end is the Capitol building. I keep wanting to call it Congress building. On the top of the Capitol building, guess what there is on top? This is religion. Everyone know this. Guess what's on top of the Capitol building? On top of the Capitol building, there's a woman with wings. Her name is called Columbia. Columbia is a Greek deity. You guys call it a goddess, right? Or a god. So she is a Greek deity or a Greek deist, all right? A Greco-Roman deist, even because the Romans worship her too. And you're in a romantic thing. That's why you're in a republic, right? You're in a democratic republic, or some people call it an oligarchic republic, but you're in a republic. A republic is a kingdom. You don't know this, right? It's a fake kingdom, a false kingdom, which your Bible talks about. Be aware of what? False kingdoms. You see, so this I'm trying to tell you, even when we're talking about what, I know it's a bad word sometimes, but sovereignty or freedom, free will, law, etc. But we're talking about this because your Bible believes in law. Even your Quran believes in law. Even some of your surahs, right? Because I know the sutras go with Quran, but even some of your surahs, if you know that. Well, there's surahs in the Quran too. But y'all know what I'm talking about, or the sutras. I said surahs. Sutras. Some of your sutras are talking about these things, right? So we're not aware, but this is all law. This is about a kingdom. A kingdom is a country, a state, an estate, all these lawful terms. So what's the religion, or what are the people who are over you in this false corporation, in this fake kingdom, in this republic? What do they believe in? Well, if you know, now this is when you got to go back. Your Bible talks about what? Coming out of bondage. Now it tells you that Kemet is our family by blood. If you are an actual Israelite or you're grafted in, whatever the case might be, you're in the kingdom. Technically, when we left Israel, even if you just want to go there, besides Joseph being married in, when we left, a whole bunch of persons of Kemet left with us because they saw what was going on. So if you believe that, then you believe that. I'm not saying these persons are bad just because they're Kemetic. That being said, Kemet also represents, or Misraim, Egypt, is what we call it today, even though not all the Egyptians are not the same as Kemetic persons, but that's a whole other thing. But basically, the persons of Kemet left with us, And some of them married into us. Once you marry into a people, you're no longer who you were, right? Right? Now you're part of a different family, part of a different nation. But that being said, in Kemet, they had a belief system. The belief system is this, not this whole thing where they tell you that Heru or Horus is where they got Christ from. No. The belief system, when you actually read the Book of the Dead, if you haven't read it, let me just help you with something. If you actually read the Book of the Dead, Osiris was the main, he's the OG, he the cat that's above everything, right? And they didn't like the other netures. They don't have gods there. They don't have deities there. They have netures, but we call them gods because we speak other languages. But the netures operate differently. That's why I say don't confuse Elohim with God or with a deity or with Esperade or with all this stuff because we just say other words we've heard. All these cultures, they worship different things, they believe different things. And so if you're going to actually learn about it, you have to learn how they operate, right? Just like if you go to those who worship Odin, if you go to hell there, what they call it hell because of Hela. And Hela is not a bad person, she just looks over the souls there. But if you go to hell there, they believe that you will freeze. This is why some of you say when hell freezes over, well, if you worship Odin, hell literally is frozen over. So you stay frozen, but you can see everything in eternity. That's what hell is for you down, right? If you're in Greek, why do you say that there's fire the way that you say it is, but do you think there's pitchforks and all this stuff? Because Hades. So Hades, he's not a bad person. He just looks over it, and there it is. So your thought process, you ain't never seen nobody with a pitchfork. I know ice and hell, none of that in the Bible, but the reason you think of that is because you're thinking of another culture. So I want you to look at this as Kemet. Kemet looks at stuff different. So Kemet, their belief system is that there's a father, so-called God, or Nechu. And this father is Osiris. He's the man, so to speak, right? And then you have this woman who had wings. She was half woman, half bird. She would sometimes even turn into a full bird. She was actually known as Isis. So you had Osiris and you had Isis, right? Osiris one day gets cut up into pieces by his enemies, the other Netchers who can't stand him. And Isis is flying around and she can't find her husband. All of a sudden she starts realizing she's seeing pieces of her husband. She takes the pieces together and she puts them together, right? But she cannot find his phallus. This is where the phallus comes from. So since she can't find it, she makes this thing that some of you might call, forgive me, I don't know how to be nice about this one, a mock phallus or a dildo, basically. I don't know how else to say it. And she creates this thing that we call an obelisk. She attaches it to his body, and either A, he came back as a zombie, or he just was dead still. But either way, she gets on, I'm just telling you what it is. She gets on top of the obelisk, and she does whatever she does, and then she gets impregnated. And then that's how Horus comes. Not right? So that's the story. So now, look right on the National Mall. What do you see? You see a phallus, a big white, but a phallus nonetheless, an obelisk. And when you see it, guess what? I know everybody tried to lie on about George Washington. Guess what George Washington actually died of? They tell you all these lies. He died of syphilis, which means that his phallus wasn't working. Right? That's what he actually died of. I know a person can tell you all this stuff. No, he actually died. I know they tell you, oh yeah, he couldn't tell a lie, he didn't share it. No, he was criminal. No, it's just, that's how making this guy some moral paragon of virtue. I'm not saying that people can't make mistakes, but not making mistakes and being a slave owner and marrying your wife, who is literally a brunette or a brunette, and back then in French, that word literally just meant you're brownish. So she passed for white. But he married her because she hated herself and had like 80% of the slaves that they would have already when he married her. He married her so he could become a huge slave owner and make money. Remember, he was just a grunt fighting at one point. Married his wife, and now all of a sudden he's making money. So a lot of cats don't see all this. But George Washington basically lost his phallus. Now, so they have a big, huge phallus sticking up the ground, and guess what's in the ground? Seed. I mean, it's religious. And I'm not saying this for something. I had to have somebody tell me this. And I didn't believe him at first because I thought, well, this all seems to be like kind of conspiracy theory-ish. No, do your research, right? This is literal. Like the phallus was made. Matter of fact, the obelisk is incomplete. There were a bunch of George Washingtons all around D.C. that were supposed to actually be around the obelisk and never completed it, which was going to make it even worse. It was going to make it even look even crazier, right? But it's just a big phallus sticking up with seed in the ground, and then across the way from it is, guess what? Columbia. She's the Greek version of who? Of Isis. Isis was flying around and trying to find her husband, couldn't find the pieces of her husband, pieces of George Washington all over Washington, D.C. So what did she do? She said, okay, I'm going to piece it together, but I can't find his phallus. I'll make a mock phallus. I'll get on top of it. I'll get impregnated, and then I'll have Heru. So guess what? Nothing in D.C. can be built higher than Columbia, the nicest. This is religious, right? And then when she sits there, anything that's born out of that building is considered to be one of her children, Horus. This is a continued belief system. So when persons say, even if you think that this is all mysticism, stuff like that, you better learn it. Because this person that lives by this and controlling you by it, bare minimum, you should at least learn what it means. So if anybody that comes out of that Capitol building, sorry to say Congress, anybody comes out of that Capitol building, they're supposed to be a child of Isis and Osiris. And if you don't believe that, when you get a chance, go. We didn't get a chance to do it this last year where we went. Go inside the Congress building, and there's a place where they worship. And look in there and look up top and see who's in there. I'm gonna just say that. You'd be surprised. George Washington in there looking like Zeus. Osiris is in there. Horus is in there. Right? And then this is stuff where they have prayer services and stuff, but the person don't know this. Right? And this is free. You got to ask permission, of course. So you got to make sure that there's, you have permission to go and you get in advance. But you can go in there and look. So I'm saying all this to say that we're not aware. Right? We're not aware of the fact. Oh, I could have said a man's private part, too. Right? But we're not aware. We're not aware of this stuff that's going on. So I'm saying on that Genesis 50, we've gone through this so much stuff. All these things are outliers, not outliers, excuse me. All these things that we consider to be outliers, or we consider to be conspiracy. At some point, what they used to say, if it walked like a duck, right? If it quacked like a duck, if it act like a duck, if it swim like a duck, if it feed like a duck, at some point, you know what I'm saying? If it's greasy like one, at some point, we gotta just say we're not eating mutton over here. We're not eating rack of lamb. We're eating something different. All right. So let's finish this up for this series, as far as at least going through the chapters, and then we'll have 3 more days, pretty much of review Q&A. All right. So chapter 50, verse 1. So this is after Israel blessed Joseph, adopts him and blesses his children, warns all of the children of Israel what's going to be happening in the last days, not just only when he died, in the last days. And then he gives up the ghost at the last chapter, I believe, of Barashayat Mem Tet, or Genesis chapter 49. So now we're in Barashayat Nun, or Genesis chapter 50. It says here in verse 1, and Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him. So his father passed away. Now I want you to catch this part, because this is going to be something cultural. I want you to know how long this is, because this will help you in the beginning of Joshua, and persons will say how long Moses, they wept over Moses. Now this is not something that, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sure if this is Kemetic only, and if Israel did this only once, or if Israelites did this and then eventually kind of just faded out. I'm just going to be honest. I don't know, but there's something interesting about this that we're going to see. So Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him. Verse 2, and Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, right? So who embalmed his father? His servants. Who are his servants? Who are the ones that serve him? They're Kemetic persons. So this is a Kemetic thing happening, right? But this did happen to Israel. This is how Israel is buried. There are similarities to how Yehoshua is buried and how Israel is buried, but Yehoshua obviously would not have been out as long. But we're going to see all this in a second. So Yehoshua, Joseph, commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel. Verse 3, and 40 days were fulfilled for him. 40 days, right? 40 days. Now remember, what does 40 mean in our culture? What's the character for 40? Anybody recall? Because remember, each character, or each person called letters, but each character also has a numerology, has a number attached to it. Anybody recall what the character for 40 is? 50 is none. That's what we're talking about today. So 40 is what? 50 is none. So 40 is what?
Yeah, speaking.
That's right. Aman. 40 is men. Or mom, even. So men, water, blood, and spirit. 40 days. dealing with water, blood, and spirit. 40 days also too is what we utilize as far as cleanliness for being legal. 40 days. Somebody. Oh, we're through. That's what's up.
It's
Yeah.
called
That's what's up. I'm on. So 40 days is we went through 40 days of fasting, right? Cleanliness, cleansing yourself, separating, right? Fast. If somebody's faster, somebody else, you're just separating yourself from somebody else, right? So 40 days of cleansing, right? But also 40 representing like building a kingdom. 40 representing preparing yourself to do Yah's will, all the different things that are there. So 40 has the extreme value, right? So here it says, watch this once again in verse 3, Genesis chapter 50, and 40 days were fulfilled, put into effect. This word, put into effect. 40 days were put into effect for him, for so are fulfilled the days of those which are embalmed. So everybody embalmed. If you're embalmed in Kemet, if you're embalmed in Mizraim at the time, everybody has to be not embalmed, but then they have to go through a process for 40 days, right? So they start pretty much immediately, right? They can't allow, like they're trying to not only just save what's going on, but save your organs, right? They're saving your brain, they're saving your heart, liver, things like that, putting them in I guess cans, canisters. We call, well, persons don't call them cans anymore, but if you can food, cans can be glass. We just think of cans as aluminum, which even they're not even aluminum anymore, they're plastic. But they're putting cans and jars, things of that nature, right? So they're going through this process, and then everything has to sit for 40 days. And during this process, watch this. Not only, so I'm going to be honest with you here too. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm not 100% sure. It says that they mourned him 80. The Kemetic person of Kemet mourned Israel 80 days. That's 7. So I don't know if that means that they had to do 40 days and then also they added on 30. They were mourning him the whole time, or if they're saying literally they got everything together, embalmed him, went through a 40-day period of letting him rest, and then mourned him on top of that 70 more days. I'm not sure. So I'm not sure if this means it's 40 days or if it's 110 days. I was looking at it, I was asking people, I was researching, I tried to read through some books. I can't really find exactly how, or well, put it like this, there's so much argument over it, it would be irresponsible of me to tell you one of them is correct or not, right? At least as far as what I know, the knowledge that I have. But they mourned him for 10 days. So 40 days was set aside for cleansing even after he was embalmed. 70 days total, they had to mourn him, regardless of which way we're talking about. You said Jesus is God and he is the Christ and facts. Well, the problem with that is the letter J doesn't even exist in Hebrew, so how can he be Jesus and he doesn't go by that name? But I get what you mean. If you're talking about the Messiah, we believe that he's the Son. We believe that he's him and the Father are one, and we believe that if he had not left, the Holy Spirit could not come. We believe in 3 and 1, etc., etc. At least here we do. So if you can get past that and actually just listen to what's being said, feel free to. If not, I don't understand why you're on somebody else's platform. Just keep scrolling. Have a great day. All right. But so all that happens and he's mourned, right? Either 110 days or 70 days. I'm not sure, but he's mourned for a really long time. So when it says somebody's embalmed, a lot of us don't think about that, but it's a long process. They don't just embalm somebody and put them in the ground real quick. They don't just embalm somebody, right? And do all these different things. You said, who is Judah? If you're, are you doing, okay, are you willing to actually listen? What is Yehada Shalom? What is Yehavada? Because that's actually how you would say it, right? If you're just coming up with letter J sounds, once again, if you know how language works, they didn't speak your language. Matter of fact, you're not speaking your language. Looking at you, I can tell you don't speak that language. You know Germanic language versus Visigothic language versus Franc language, and the Francs were doing what the Romans were doing, allowing them to do, and the Romans were speaking Greek and Latin more so even than Romanian language. And are you aware of that? So Jacob means, I'm gonna do this real quick because I don't have time for this today. I'm sorry, I'm just being honest with you. I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. You can stay on for a hot second if you want. After that, I'm gonna just let you go because obviously you're not willing to listen. But if you actually would like to see what you're talking about, we literally just finished a series. We just finished something on for VBS. So I'm literally just gonna show you what we have written. You see this here? You see this? Yes. So Dinah, her name means judgment. You know it as judgment because you speak a language in which they made up the letter J. If you have a 6 and 11 King James version, by the way, just open it up and see how many times you see the letter J. If it's actually the original one, you'll see that they never used the letter J. That being said, you see that? Dinah, but that's her name was not judgment. Her name was Dinah or Dinah, right? That's not how you say it. Let's go to another J one. Let's see. You said Judah. Here you go. Judah means praised, right? But that's speaking somebody else's language. Praised. By character, it would actually be Yahavada, Yahkevav, Dalatche, right? So when you speak, without me going deep into all this stuff, I'm gonna just leave it here. Because at this point, if you're arguing, you just argue for the sake of arguing, and if somebody doesn't care about actually being educated properly. But for real, it's very apparent that you came, you came to a gunfight with a knife. Like you're not ready for this. No offense, no shade to you, but I'm not going to go through something where you don't know the difference between English and even in English, in Germanic English, they didn't even have a letter J until the 1600s, 1700s. And you're still arguing with me as if his name could be something that it's not. Now, if anything, I would have given you credit if you said Yesus or Yesu, because that's Greek and Latin, and even with that, those are nicknames given to him by heathens who did believe that he was one and the same with the Father, but their father was Zeus. That's why his name is half man, half Zeus, Yesus, right? Right? If you don't believe this, by the way, let's just do some quick, because I know there's S-E-O-U-S and there's Z-E-U-S. Let's just look at the sus, the Zeus. This is sus, a suspect. You don't know this, right? Zeus. There's somebody called Dionysus. Guess what his name means? Son of Zeus. There's somebody named Dionysus. Guess what her name is? Daughter of Zeus. There's somebody called Perseus. You know him as Perseus. It's just a different dialect. Perseus. Guess what Perseus' name is? He's a son of Zeus. There's somebody called Pegasus. Guess who Pegasus is? That's a horse of Zeus. There's somebody called Zeus. His name is Zeus or Zeus. Well, then there's somebody called Yesus. Guess what his name is? Half man, half Zeus. So if you worship half man, half Zeus, it's only because you were ignorant of it, and you might be a babe, but as you stop getting off the breast and having a sincere milk, which doesn't seem to be sincere, it seems like you're having something formulaic. But if you get off the breast milk long enough and you start eating meat, you'll start being able to chew on some concepts that are greater than that. You said with a dull knife? Alrighty. So anyways, we'll leave that there. But that's what I'm saying. You have to know your culture. You have to at least be honest about language. Right? Like I said, if I'm speaking, I would not dare tell a Scottish person or an Irish person, what their dance should be. It's not my culture. There's certain things they've told me that I've seen and stuff like that, but I wouldn't tell them what their culture is outside of what I actually know or what they've said or what they put out about themselves at least. The problem is, once again, you have somebody trying to worship or try to be part of a culture that's not their own, and they're telling you, no, we as the oppressor or the oppressor that taught me, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you what they say we're supposed to do. I stopped dancing for them a long time ago. Right? But appreciate you. You said so Jesus isn't just a translation of Yeshua. No, it's not. Matter of fact, the translation of Yeshua is Joshua. So if you were honest about, not saying you, but in general, the persons were honest about it in general, the translation of Joshua, it should be Joshua the Christ. And by the way, Joshua and Yeshua have the same name, or Yehashua is his actual name, but Joshua and Yeshua have the same name. So if you believe that it's Joshua here, it should be Joshua here. Why did they change it? These are questions we should ask. It's definitely not just a transliteration. And by the way, you have to be careful with transliteration and translation, because certain things don't translate and certain things don't transliterate. Right? Like we have different sets of characters, we have different sets of thought process. Characters mean different things in different languages as well. So you can't just say, a lot of times what they do is they say, oh, the closest sound that we have or the closest meaning that we have, but that doesn't always work. Right? What's happened is you've had something come along that's not Hebrew or Avda, what we call Hebrew nowadays, but or Ifrit, all that stuff you've heard, but Avda, which is actually Hebrew, you guys try to call it Paleo-Hebrew. But instead of Hebrew, you've heard a lot of stuff in modern Hebrew. So when it's in modern Hebrew, right, when you tell them with modern Hebrew is not even the same thing. Modern Hebrew, I won't say it's not similar enough that you can catch the gist, but modern Hebrew has been changed, and modern Hebrew not only just by the sounds, right, but also too, and the culture, but modern Hebrew also has been changed as far as the characters. So if you look at the characters, right, each word has characters to it, the character of a word. Right, so you have a definition that's more like denotation as far as like specific definition, like literal translation, but also there's connotation. So if you don't know the character of the word versus the so-called definition of the word, you'll still be lost. So certain things don't translate. They just don't, right? A lot of persons are not aware of that, right? So when you're trying to, you have to be very careful. But anyway, back to Genesis 50, right? I'm not, like I said, I'm not spending. They got 2 minutes, 3 minutes out of me. I'm not going any further. But verse 3, the 40 days were fulfilled for him, and so are the fulfilled the days of those which are involved in Kemetic mourn him 70 and 10 days. So it seems like to me, honestly, that they probably mourned him total 40 plus 70. So this was 110 days, more than likely. But you can think of it 70 days total or 110 days total. But either way, he was mourning for a really long time. All right. And when the days of mourning, right, and we here mean mourning, right? So this is not mourning, but when the days of mourning were past, Joseph spake unto the family of Pharaoh, to the house of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found grace, if now I have found grace in your eyes, speak, I pray you, in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, La'ah, right? The opposite of what you would think. He said, I don't want to die, right? Or he said, I died, but my grave, which I have digged for me, is in the land of Canaan. He already had his stuff together. He had a burial plot, so to speak, already taken care of. He said, I don't want to be here, right, where you guys might try to be keeping me. He said, I'm not trying to stay over this direction, right? And thank y'all for the love, appreciate you. He said, I'm not trying to stay over here. He said, I'm trying to go. He said, I'm trying to go back to Canaan, to the same place that Abraham, right? And if you look at what he said Abraham's buried there and Sarah's buried there. He said Isaac is buried there, Rebekah is buried there. Here's an interesting one. He says, I dug my grave there, but he said, not Rachel's grave is there. Remember, Rachel is buried where she died when she was giving birth to Benjamin. He says, no, Leah's grave is there. You know, the wife that was technically the first wife and all that stuff. Once again, that was something that was done out of order. That's not a belief system we have. Nevertheless, right, he says the first Leah, the one that everybody looks at and she was mismanaged and all that, at the end of the day, he said, no, my wife. He said, Leah is buried. Leah is buried there. Interesting tidbit, especially for some of the conversations we were having centered around BBS lately and all that. So he said, Leah is buried there. Right, when you do your research. So he says, so Pharaoh tells him, go and bury your father, bury Israel, bury your source, put your source back where his fathers are, where his sources are. Here we are having a conversation about today. Put your source back. There's a place to where our source is. Our source resides, our source should begin, and our source should end. And we keep trying to put it everywhere else. But what our fathers, or what the sources, or what Elohim, or what the things spiritually are, what our ancestry is, etc., what we have is supposed to be kept where we are, where they were. And the problem is that we got removed so much from stuff that we don't even know what free will smells like. You think that free will is the fact that you get off on Saturday and Sunday. You think that's free will? Oh yeah, my job let me on Saturday and Sunday. I work 70 hours a week, but you know, I pay taxes. Y'all get mad when people be like, yeah, give a tithe or give a tribute, but shoot, y'all get 50, 60, 70% in taxes. But we think we have free will. We're not in a position, right? We don't even realize that, you know, creditors have no right to even come and talk to us, right? But we're not in a position of free will. Now, once again, this is why I always say, make sure you're careful, because some of y'all will take this stuff and you don't get no training. Please make sure you get. And once again, I'm not even the guy to go through for the training, even though I give you the beginning. I'm just saying, please, man, please, sir, be careful, because a lot of y'all come in, and I was talking about this with somebody yesterday or the day before. They'll mess you mess up. You come in, and persons like us who are doing it correct, you know, you got to be honorable. I even tell persons when you go before the judge, be careful. Yeah, you're going to judge in the corporation. Don't speak down to the judge. He is your honor. Yes, your honor this, your honor that. Y'all come in there cussing them out, doing foolishness. They should throw you in prison. Some of y'all out here harming people and then trying to use law to try and get around this stuff. No, you should be thrown in prison. I'm not defending that, right? So you got to be careful. I just want to put that out there, because when we talk about this stuff, persons remember they don't get no training, and they mess up something that we got going on. Anyway, so he gets permission, and he goes to bury his father. And it says not only that, this is how much stature Israel has. It says that Kemet, the servants of Kemet, and the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Kemet, and all the house of Joseph, that's the families. So these are families, all these families, and his brethren and his father's house, only right, only their little ones and flocks and herds they left in the land of Goshen. So basically, everybody that could travel safely went back to make sure that they came to this funeral. Verse 9, and there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was very great company. So the soldiers came out, all this. Remember who Joseph is. Joseph is second in command. And the only reason he's second in command is because Pharaoh said, whenever I'm around, which means that when Pharaoh's not around, he's always first. So this is basically like a Pharaoh walking around, and this is the send-off he gets. He was in very great company. Matter of fact, remember company 2, talking about military company, etc., right? Verse 10, and they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond Jordan. Now, right, threshing floors are very important in culture too. Threshing floor you're going to see all throughout, because threshing floor is basically where stuff is separated, where it's ground up, where stuff is being, yeah, basically where stuff can be separated, where newness happens, all this stuff, okay? So the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond Jordan. So they're even giving you specific places that you can see on the map. They went beyond, right beyond Jordan, and there they mourned with a great, and very sore lamentation. Right, Lamentation, the book of Lamentations, by the way, written by Jeremiah, because Jeremiah is the weeping prophet. So you're seeing certain words that come over and over again, that a lot of us don't think about. So Lamentation is great weeping, right? With serious weeping, a lot of sackcloth and ashes, all the stuff you would hear with a tithe that would be put on the forehead that we only think about now on Ash Wednesday, right? But this is something that's greater than that. This is your culture, the tithe, the mark. Right before it was known as the cross, it was known as the tithe, it was known as the mark, it was known as the place it was finished. It's the last character of our alphabet. So if somebody has the tithe on there, they're saying it's finished. This is why when somebody passes away, you put on sackcloth and ashes, and you take some of the ashes and you take that tithe, that mark, it means mark as well, or what you call a cross. It's because it's the last character. You think it's because you're a Christian. And it's Ash Wednesday. No, before that, remember, the Bible existed before Christianity, right? Even people you guys call Christians wouldn't know what a Christian is, right? So they before all that, there was a culture around it. They were doing this for specific reasons, and he made a mourning for his father 7 days. So now, literally, so once again, some people might only believe it's 70 days total. The way I see it is it's 40 days where they embalmed them, they had to mourn for 40 days. Then in Kemet, they actually said we mourned 70 days after that. Then they took his body back, they buried it, and then it says they mourned for 7 more days. That's how important Israel is, and really that's how important life is. This is why when Christians talk all this stuff about life and all this stuff, and y'all just be, acting like you can just get more. I don't know. There's nothing on earth as valuable as life. There's nothing on earth as valuable as a human life, especially. Because I know some of y'all get into the animal life and all that stuff, and I'm not trying to be rude, but I don't grow with you on that. I'm not saying that you should mistreat animals. As a matter of fact, I think there's really crazy people who mistreat animals purposefully, right? That being said, I'm not going to act like your dog's life is on the same level as your daughter's life. Some of y'all believe that. Y'all have to we'll just have to be separate on that belief system. But that being said, right, that they came doesn't mean it's not sad. Just means that they're not the same level, right? That being said, and he made a mourning for his father 7 days. Verse 11. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning in the floor of Atad, the threshing floor, they said, "This is a grievous mourning to those of Kemet." Wherefore the name of it was called Abel Mizraim, right? Abel Mizraim, Abel, right? Mizraim, right? So part of Abel's name, if you guys don't know, Abel, right? Remember, does anybody recall what Abel's name means? Remember there was Cain and Abel. We went over that way at the beginning of the series, probably in February. But does anybody recall what Abel's name means? Right? Adam's name means man. Iazar is not Eve. Iazar means help me. That's why it's called help me. I will make for him to help me. Then you have Cain, his name, or Ka'an. But Cain, his name means possession. And then Abel. Abel's name means what? Anybody recall? Seth's name means compensation. Abel's name means what? See, because they're telling you this person is now Abel Mislaim. Not ownership, right? Possession is Cain's name. So Abel's name, Abal, Abel's name, right, breaks down to breathe or breath, actually. So Abel's name means breath, which is part of the meaning for the Hakodash, or Holy Spirit. But Abel, because of how he was off, how he was off by his own brother, his name now is synonymous with sadness, with mourning, with going back to the ground from which you came, with his blood still crying up from the ground. So they name him here Abal, Abel, Mislaim, or Abal Kemet, right? Putting these two terms together, Abal Ma'ayin. When you put these two together, you're talking about because remember they named it this why? Because the persons in the land of Canaan saw that not just Israelites were there, but that all these Kemetic persons came to mourn this Israelite. And they were like, wow, this person, this mourning, this funeral service is so powerful, it's so crazy that they call it Abal Ma'ayin. Right? Now, they've gone back to the land of Canaan. This is where Israel or Jacob was. Right? And Jacob went back to where Abraham had bought the land originally. So remember, he calls it, and forgive me, I'm gonna mess up this pronunciation. It's like Machpelah, or something like that. But Machpelah is what it was called when it's the place where Abraham bought the land from the Hittites, right? And where he buried his wife, right? And where Isaac and Rebekah are married, and where Leah is buried, and now where they come to bury Israel. So where we call it one thing, they call it another, right? But the persons who were of Canaan, they called that land. Forgive me, I gotta find it again. They called that land. Okay, they called it. Well, no. Time out. Sorry, give me a second. Oh yeah, they call it Abal Ma'ayin. They call it Abel Mislaim. They were Abel and Kemet meet. They say that the Kemetic persons are grieving over this as if it's Abel losing his life. That's what it means to them. That's the level of grief that happened when Israel died. Right? That's the level of grief that happened when Israel died. That's the level of grief when the progenitor, right, or the seminal head, if you will, of our people, when he died, right? That's the level of grief even that happens in culture and community today when everybody wants to act like the Negro has no right to anything. Because the Negro is an Israelite, remember? As far as the original term, as far as a lot of you guys call Yehudi, when you say Yehudi or Yehudiyah, and you're talking about the Israelites that were in Spain and in Portugal and in parts of Europe, when you use that term Yehudi or Yehudiyah, you're talking about, they wouldn't have called them Yehudi. They wouldn't have called them Yehudah. They wouldn't have called them Judah. They would have called them Negro. Right? Even if you go to Spain right now, right? If you go to Spain, there's a difference between somebody who's black and Negro. They don't just call you Negro because you're black or you're brown. If you're brown, you're marron. But if you're a certain family of black, you're Negro. You're Negro. Matter of fact, do some research. Negro is one of the most ancient West African terms for a black man you can find for African. So a lot of you forget. Remember, what is it, Carthage? You guys remember back to Carthage? Carthage was in power before the Greeks for 1,000+ years at least. So that means that the Greeks were in charge, but the Romans don't really take charge until 300 BC, and the Greeks are in charge for a long time before that. So really the Romans, until the Romans take over Carthage, right? They fight against, I don't know why I forget my man's name. I see it. Hannibal. They fight against Hannibal. They fight against Hannibal's father. There's both of them named Hannibal, but we know Hannibal's the younger one. But they fight against all them, and eventually they lose because the Romans, I won't even say play unfair with war, but they go for the city, or they go for the children, the men, women, and children, and they start getting at them, and so Hannibal can't take over Rome, right? Remember, he's like right at the doorstep, but he has to leave to take care and help his community out. So they end up losing. Ultimately, those wars, the Punic Wars, or what we call the Phoenician Wars, the Punic Wars, because they don't know how to pronounce stuff. They didn't care about pronouncing it correctly. But the Punic Wars or the Punic Wars, they went on for 100 years. So that's when they lost, when Rome was starting to come into power, right? Hannibal almost won. So if you know that story, but before that, for thousands of years, Carthage was in charge. And then the persons forget that even after that, remember, it's Moors who are in charge, even all the way up through Europe again, including in Spain. Because if you guys forget, during the Punic Wars, when Hannibal was fighting, this is 400 BC, somewhere in there, 500 BC possibly, something like that. When they're fighting that fight, you have to also remember that literally Carthage went down, North Africa where they were went down, so they moved the capital up to Spain because they owned all that. So the Moors, or who we even call, they would eventually be called Moors later on, right? When the Moors then take over again, officially from the 700s till 1491. That's why in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, but they had to first beat the Moors, and then Spain actually became an official country for the first time, as far as the way it is today. In 1491, then they went to the Pope and asked permission because they go get slaves, and then they tried to enslave Negroes, and then they enslaved Moors, and then they started looking for Africans, and then they went to the Caribbean. 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, right? So a lot of us aren't aware. Like that's our story being removed. Our story being removed is a sad day, right? Look at Willie Lynch. Right? Literally preached. He preached. People don't look at it like this. They call it the Willie Lynch letter now because they're giving you the parts that were written out. Those are basically his bullet points from a speech he gave on Christmas Day, 1712. Right? December 25th, 1712. So this was a Christmas sermon. They brought this Michael Jordan to slavery from the Caribbean to his family, right? Lynchburg, Virginia, all that. They brought him there, right, to go ahead and give a speech. They were having a problem, us Negroes and us slaves were getting out of pocket, and we started to revolt too much, and we were fighting back too much, and we were afraid. He said it in the speech. He says, you guys are, he said your real problem is not what's going on. He said your real problem is you can't get sleep. So you're afraid. You think that they'll slit your throat in the middle of your sleep. That's what he said. So he says, this is what I came up with. This is how I get these Negroes where I am. This is how the Maroons and the Negroes and the Jamaicans and the Haitians, all that where I am, this is how we deal with it. And he started giving, and he said, I'll give you first age. We separated him on age. Not because it's even the first thing he uses. He says it's just because I'm going in alphabetical order. That's how much they study this. He's like, he's like, I'm just telling you notes that I've taken over years. He said, we deal with them and we separate them on age. We separate them by color. The dark skin, they'll hate each other. They'll hate the light skin. The light skin will hate the dark skin. He said, we separate them by plantation. This is why some of y'all still be like, Brooklyn? And some of y'all like, no, Chocolate City. Some of y'all are no, Chi-Town. Some of y'all, because he said we separate you by plantation. They'll start saying whatever master they're under, right? Whatever corner they have in the master's plantation is better than somebody else's, and they'll start fighting over that. He said that you'll fight over sex. We don't need men. We don't need women. We don't need marriage. That's the cornerstone of any civilization, by the way. Outside of their belief in the Most High, but some of y'all don't want to go there. So outside of that, guess what the cornerstone of every civilization is? How men treat women and how women treat men. If you can't get that right, you already gonna lose. And guess what, brothers and sisters? Us black, so-called black folk, that's one of the things that we really bad with. We're better than what they say statistically. So I'll give us credit there. But why? Because we look. How can I say this? And not get in trouble on social media. Okay, look, real talk. Buck breaking was a thing. And it was on the DL, and guess what happens to a lot of cats still on the DL, right? Being in prison and on the plantation is a thing. It's still by law. There's persons picking cotton and making when you sit on the plane, they make your pillows, and when you go to order today from McDonald's or Burger King or Chick-fil-A or Chipotle, whatever, they make the prison clothes there. Some of them, they make the clothes that you're buying at Ross. And getting paid what? Pennies on the dollar. And still not getting the pennies, and then when they get out, they can't, because they are so-called prisoners or imprisoned in the system. They're slaves, right? Guess what? They still can't vote. They still can't get certain jobs. They still can't make certain money. They still can't live in certain places or whatever, right? So this stuff hasn't changed. We were told that it changed. We were told that it's different, but you're dealing with the same stuff. Just because we had the technology, you don't think that there were black persons that couldn't teach like I was teaching back then? We're acting like because I'm doing it on the phone today that everything's gotten better. Do you not know that as far as the percentage of wealth, I'm not just talking about wealth. Yes, are there black billionaires? Yes. Are there black persons in the NBA that are playing making, $100 million contracts eat like now? I think they said they signed some cat for he signed for like $500,000 for five, like, so that's almost five, like 5 years. They get close to basically making what? That's 100 million a year. They getting close to making ridiculous stuff, right? And or maybe I'm thinking, oh no, it's gonna be there. That's what they said it's gonna be projected in like 5 years. They think that it'll be normal for us to just turn on ESPN or whatever you watch and be like, dang, so and so getting paid 100 million a year, right? But that being said, do you see that money? Is that gonna go to your neighborhood? Is anybody building schools for you? Is anybody saying, shoot, I've got $100 million. We can just separate and start a country. We can get an island. Just separate. Americans says they better without us anyway, let them be. You're not going to see that because of what? Because it's a Willie Lynch mindset. There's a Willie Lynch syndrome. Right? These are things that we were warned about by Israel. We talked about that yesterday. So when Israel dies and we don't heed to his warning as our father, as our source, if you want to go to the stuff, even if you want to use this as an allegorical conversation or whatever, fine. If he's our source, if this is the source of thought process, if our ancestors were telling us this years ago, if Malcolm X was telling us what was going to happen, everything he said happened, and we still not listening to him at some point, somebody got to say something wrong. If Marcus Garvey was telling us this stuff was going to happen, and everything he said was going to happen is happening, we still not going to listen, something's wrong. If Harriet Tubman was telling us we should fight against this stuff, but we still not listening. So Sojourner Truth was telling our sisters what was going to happen to them, and we still not listening to her. At some point, I'm just saying, our ancestry has laid out the thing for us, and we still not hearing them. We still trying to be part of a system that can care less about us. All right. So anyway, what are we doing? Verse. Let me make sure. I know I have it on there, and since that we might even go a little bit over, but I think we're going to end a little bit early because I do got some stuff we got to get done today. And I need some conversations that got to happen today too. Hold on. Let's see. So his sons, verse 12, Genesis chapter 50, verse 12. Right? His sons did exactly what Israel said. They did what? They did what they felt like. They did what? They did what somebody else told them. They did what? They did what social media said. No. His sons, the persons of his family, did exactly what his father commanded them. There's a lot in that. They did exactly what Israel said. They did exactly what he lived by. At some point, by the way, if I can just throw this out there, at some point, even if I've learned some things. My father has told me stuff, and I didn't believe it, or I didn't know what he was talking about, or I just, even I've had disagreements with him, and I was off. But I've learned, sometimes my father said do something, even if I don't know exactly why he's saying it, I'll just do it anyways, and I'll be like, oh, in the midst of being not, once it gets studied, I'm not saying everything our parents tell us to do is always correct, right? Sometimes they have some behavior that needs to be corrected. That being said, I'll be honest, more often than not, what my father has taught me, and I do what he says, or even following his example, even if I have to, I have to manipulate a little bit to kind of get on the righteous side. Following my father, especially knowing that he wanted nothing from me but the best, following his will usually gets me in better positions than not. Right? Some of us got fathers, they ain't really worried about us like that. I'm just saying my personal experience, right? Because I believe our Father in heaven is better than my father that I had on earth. And better than anybody's father. That being said, my father, he ran some game, he told me some stuff he loved. Like I told you before, my father, when a person said, like, why are you being in a relationship with your wife like this, I went looking for a wife because my father taught me what it was. Don't look for a girlfriend, look for a wife. And he didn't even study the Bible like that, but I later found out, yeah, he who finds a wife, she's supposed to be already qualified. You ain't supposed to find a woman and try to make her nothing. She's already a wife. Now she's supposed to get better too, like you're supposed to get better, like fine wine. But if you find a wife, then you have no need to be looking for anything else. A lot of cats out here, you looking for other stuff because first of all, you ain't looking for a wife, you found some hips, right? And then y'all you did something in between the hips long enough, and y'all was together long enough, and you said, I guess we'll make this work. Maybe you had some children in the middle of doing something in between the hips. And to be fair, to do the righteous thing, it was like, I need to take care of this woman and this child. But I'm saying, if we do this correctly, if we just do it up, like my father said, hey son, find a wife. My mother, right, who's passed away and stuff like that since she got sick when I was young, but one thing she told me when I was little, I didn't even know what she meant, but she said, boy, don't ever bring any girl to my house unless she's your wife. And I've never brought anybody into my father's house except my wife. Never. Right? So even little things like that, I'm just saying we should listen to the sources that we have. Remember, even the character, remember, for those of you who know, by character, Abba literally is a source on both sides and the seed in the middle, right? And Amma is a source on both sides, but the water, blood, and spirit, or the womb in the middle. Meaning the two come together, right? So the father is the source, the mother multiplies the source. So even in our culture, if you don't know what a wife is, bare minimum, you got to figure out what you as a source have and how she can help to multiply it, and how you protect what multiplies the vision that you've been given. This is all cultural. So his children listened to him. They listened to their father. And verse 13, for his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, right? Which Abraham bought with the field for possession, right? For Canaan, for a king, for possession of the burying place of Ephraim, the Hittite, before Mamre, right? We've already gone over that in Genesis series. Verse 14, and Joseph returned to Kemet. So this is after the 7 days of mourning. This is after them traveling from Goshen. This is after them taking 70 days to mourn him, as far as Mizraim mourning him. This is after 40 days of after he was embalmed, of allowing his body to settle. Okay, right? So he returns to Kemet. He and his brethren, he and his brothers, he and his family, and all that went up with him to bury his father after he had buried his father. Right? Verse 15, and when Joseph's brethren saw that their father was dead, they said, Joseph will peradventure hate us, and will certainly requite us all the evil which we did unto him. Right? So basically, hey, Joseph, now that we come back, right, he gonna hate us because of what? This is where forgiveness got to pop in. We got to have some honest conversation too. Now they already had honest conversation at this point. Those who've been part of the series, you know, they had to have some conversation about, yo, y'all saw me in the slavery, like blah blah. And that's one of the things persons don't like to do, is have honest dialogue about, hey, yeah, forgiving you ain't even the problem. Remember, we talk about this in relationships. A lot of persons forgive somebody. I hope this never happened to you. You know, and if you do, the Bible says that you do have a way of being able to ask for divorce if it's too much for you to handle. But you know, if somebody cheat and they stick around, a lot of y'all be like, well, I forgave you. And it's true. And by the way, if you were hurt real bad by that, especially depending on how often they were cheating and how they cheated, yeah, you know, it should take you a minute to maybe get over that. That being said, if you still 5, 10, 15, 20 years in and treating them every day like they've cheated, what's happened is, it's not that you haven't forgiven, but you never built up trust. Remember how we talked about that before in our marital sessions? So forgiveness is not, everybody just goes, forgive. Yeah, forgive, but I can forgive you and not be cool with you no more. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can forgive you and let go and be like, hey, bro, you did me foul, you did me dirty, you stole from me, and the way you stole from me, like, but I'm gonna forgive you. I'm not gonna hold on to it, because I can't also hold on to it because it'll kill me. So I'm not gonna die on some stuff or whatever that's done, and I'm not gonna hold you accountable to where you feel like I'm not gonna hold it over your head and make you feel guilty. I want you to know you're forgiven. But it might be every once in a while. Some of my boys, I would just say, yeah, man, I love you, bro, but I forgive you. But until we build up trust, I can't really, I can't just be hanging around you. You know, some brothers that I wanted to take places that we've gone now, couldn't bring them, because they showed that if I couldn't trust you on this level, I can't have you messing up the bag when we start talking about 100,000, stuff like that. You messed it up on the $100 level. You stealing the $500. I can't trust you when now there's, hundreds of cats around the world giving, and I put you in a position where you have access to the pot. We got to figure out how to build up trust. So this is an honest thing. I love the fact that it pops up again, because they've already talked about building up trust, and Joseph told them that he's forgiven them and the Most High helped them, and he's named his children this, and his children have been accepted back in, and he's blessed Benjamin. But those 10 brothers, they did him dirty. They sold him into slavery, and so he's coming back, and they're like, oof. Now that our father's gone, that might have been the only thing that was keeping him from really. I know he said everything, but our father's gone, so they have an honest conversation. Like, hey, I don't know how he gonna feel about us now. Anybody ever been there? Like, you straighten everything, but I'll put it like this: like my grandmother, she's a matriarch on my father's side. She's a matriarch, Actually on both sides. My grandfather, my father's side passed away. My grandfather on my mother's side wasn't really around. He came back in later on in life, but he left them when him and my well, no, not when they when they were children. I think he left them, right. So basically, I had two matriarchs, like a lot of us unfortunately got matriarchs, and we never friends with the patriarchs that we're supposed to. So, but when on my father's side, grandmother was holding it together. Everybody was nice, and when she passed away, it was like overnight. Everybody hated each other. Went over her house to pick up stuff. People had already been there to get stuff that wasn't even theirs, that wasn't even in the will for them to get, and then separation. My father and my mother ended up because of the whole, like we said, women stuff, colorism stuff. My mother could pass for white. My father, dark skin. The cats didn't like her on my father's side. Cats didn't like him on my mother's side. But during that whole experience when she was passing away, everything overnight separated, right? Not true family dynamic, right? Not a true family dynamic, right? And so they're thinking the same thing. Like, hey, dang, Joseph, he'd been nice. He'd been taking care of us. He made sure we were fed during the famine and all that stuff. But maybe it's just because he knew that his father was alive. He met Benjamin. Now that our father's dead, he probably gonna turn up, so to speak. And thank you, moderators. I see y'all having to go in today. I'm sorry, these last couple of days these last few days have been rough for y'all. But thank you for what y'all do. Appreciate you. But verse 16, they sent a messenger unto Joseph. Not Joseph sent a messenger to them. They sent a messenger to Joseph, saying, thy father, did command before he died, saying, they're like, hey, remember he said, so shall you say unto Joseph, forgive, I pray thee now, the trespass of thy brethren and their sin, for they did unto thee evil, and now we pray thee, forgive the trespass of the servants of Elachim Abba, right? And Joseph wept when they spake unto him. So they sent him a message like, yo, please, hey, bro, remember our father said, forgive us. They brought the stuff up, and his brethren also went out and fell down before his face. So after they sent the message out, they came out, they cried, and they said, behold, we be thy servants. They trying to lower themselves. Now look, humble yourself, this and that, but now at the end of the day, now you're going to a place where you're trying to do all this, you're trying to do a little bit extra. But watch this, and Joseph said unto them, fear not. Remember this word fear here, right? What does fear mean when they talk about fear? Fear and afraid are not the same thing, especially in this time frame when you're talking about the King James Version, right? Fear and afraid are not the same word. Fear means respect. So don't even respect that thought process. Don't revere it. Now it can be, yes, you can say therefore if you revere something too much, you can become afraid. And ultimately that's what afraid is. A lot of you might not know this, but afraid, right? When somebody's afraid of something, you have reverenced it or you have respected it so much that you now are afraid of it, right? So to fear can become to be afraid. Fear though means really reverence. So that's why it says fear Elohim. That's why some persons say, I don't fear nobody but the Most High. Why are they saying that? They're saying, I don't reverence anybody, at least in the manner that I would reverence him. Right? How you doing, Lily? We'll see if we can, or if there's anything specific you want us to pray about. I'm praying about it right now. But in his brethren, so he said, look, fear not. Don't respect that. He said, for am I in the place of Elohim? Now watch this. Israel. There are persons that have done things wrong to us. Joseph of Israel. This person that separated you from your source, from your father. And a lot of persons, they get mad, especially with this whole reverse racism thing, or the whole thing they talk about black fatigue and all these different things that come up. And because they expect that we are going to turn around and do the same thing to our oppressors. Or, a lot of persons when they talk trash and they talk bad about men, they talk bad about women. Oh, I'm on. Hola, Udelis. Gracias. Right? Amen. I'm on. Amen. So this is, a lot of us forget. Or a lot of us have this thing where persons who've done us wrong are like, yeah, you know what? Or persons who have done wrong. Even be careful. If that's being part of the community, Lily. Persons who have done wrong, even have this mindset that we're going to do things to them that they might have done to others, right? which I get, because do unto others as you want done unto you. Be careful what you're putting out here, right? So-called in the universe, because whatever you put out here, it returns. Well, you want to call it karma, which is a Greek spirit, so I don't necessarily call it karma. But that being said, if you call it karma, if you call it just justice, if you call it God's will, whatever the case might be, there's a lot of cats out here who are all over the place and are trying, and do a lot of different things, and they're just waiting for the day up that's gonna return. It's gonna hit me back in the face. It's gonna be back in my, it's gonna get me down. It's gonna do this. It's gonna mess us up, right? A lot of us have that mindset. A lot of us have that thought process, and so, but Hassan, but Yasab, but Joseph, he says something specific. He says, hey, verse 19. Says, fear not. Don't give any reverence to that thought process. Don't respect that. Forbid that from your thought process. Why? Because I'm not in the place of Elohim. I'm not the Most High. Only He has a right. Even though you thought you had the right to do something similar or outright do something that some would consider to be worse than death to me, I don't live by that standard. You can't allow that to become your standard. I don't care what they've done, what they've said, how they treated, all this stuff. You cannot allow that to become your standard. You cannot allow persons to take you out of what God's will is for you. You cannot allow yourself to become the hate, right? If everybody says that you walk around with hatred, don't allow their saying that you walk around with hatred to bring hatred to you. Just be yourself. And ultimately, if somebody can't trust who you are, then they will phase themselves out of your life. Or they'll work around and be around somebody who's loving like you are. If somebody says that you are, if somebody says you're poor and you never make it, you don't start living like what they say. Keep living the way that you spoke. Matter of fact, keep living in righteousness. If you're living poor, then start figuring out what it is that's causing poverty. Get part of a community that wants to make sure that the first will be last, the last will be first. Right? Be part of a community that says, we know the poor will be with us always, so we'll make sure that there's a way that everybody will be taken care of. All right, verse 20. But as for you, this is what he says. He keeps it real. They have a real conversation. But as for you, ye thought evil against me. However, Elohim meant it unto Tabah. He meant it for righteousness. He meant it for so-called good. To bring to pass as this yom, as this day, as this period of time, to save much people alive. Even when you tried to cast me into foolishness and into unrighteousness, into something that causes death. He said, even though that's what you tried to do to me, he said, Yah used it to cause me to make persons live. You thought that you would do something that would take my life. Yah saw it and turned it for his will, that what you did to take life actually gives life. Many persons try to do a lot of stuff to us and a lot of stuff to us personally to try and take life, but the reality is while they're trying to take life from us, really don't realize they're just giving us, right? Giving us an opportunity to live different, to be free of them. So now, verse 21, he says, now therefore, because of that, now therefore, fear ye not. Don't give reverence to that. He said, don't even respect it. Because I'm not, you sent me to death, not realizing that Yah, seeing in the future, seeing in the past, and seeing in the present, saw you would try to send me to my death, and he used me to nourish. So watch this. He says, don't respect that. Don't fear that. He says, I will nourish you. He says, that's what I am. Remember, his name, Yahasab, or Yasab, Joseph, means Yahweh will add. He says, so I add life, I nourish. He says, so not only will I nourish you, I will nourish your little ones. I'm not here to just take care of you. See, you're so worried about just what's happening to you, what I might do to you. He said, no, I'm not just here for that. I'm here to nourish the little ones, the next generation. How you doing, Black Rose? He said, I'm bigger than that, right? Is what you're doing, big? See, I've said this before. When I go home and stuff, and I see cats, some of them still be on the corner, they really nice on the corner. I mean, they got fresh shoes, they got like the Jordans, they got the best jerseys, They got the hat. They still selling the bag with the socks in them and some of the singles and all that stuff, right? And I used to buy the singles from them. You know what I'm saying? I'm not mad. I used to sit there from time to time. I sit there and talk with them all day some days, but other days I was trying to get myself together. But if I go there and they look really nice, but watch this. If I say, yo, let's go get something to eat. And I'm not even asking them to pay for anything. That's where their mind goes. But I just say, let's go get something to eat. They're like, if I were to say, a lot of times I tell them, don't worry about it. If I say we're gonna get something to eat, and if I don't say you pay your stuff, if I say let's get something to eat, I mean I got you. But if I say like, hey, if I were to try to say, hey, let's do something together, all of a sudden they look like they got more money. They look like they are doing well, but they're only great for that corner. You take them outside of that corner, they're not ready for much of anything, right? They're not ready for much of anything. They can't do anything outside the corner. They have a mindset. Everything is around the corner. They look great for just being in that one slot, in that one position. But they're not able to go anywhere outside of that. Right? So when y'all gives you something, you got to realize you got to be greater than the corner. This is why you got to, look, work the 9 to 5 and work it well. I worked many a 9 to 5. I worked 2.5 jobs at times. I was sitting there where I was sleeping in metro stations, sleeping in elevators and stuff, because I wasn't going to be able to make it home that night, trying to make what little money I could to survive. Not to thrive, but to survive. I ain't mad at it. Do what you got to do. And some of you are blessed where your 9 to 5 might be your work. Remember, there's a difference between a job and work. Your job means toil. Your work is actually what you call to do. So so do what you need to do. Be faithful. Be grateful. Right? Start planning your escape. All that. Right? Start planning your escape. All that. Right? I'm grateful for you hanging in there, doing what you're supposed to do. You said TikTok is choppy. Oh, okay. All right, I didn't know that. It says we got full signal, but let me try this. Thank you for letting me know. If TikTok is choppy, by the way, let me know. I saw the numbers were going down. We'll see if it's better now. Okay. So I apologize. I'm not sure. Somebody just told me TikTok got choppy. I saw the numbers were down. I guess I should have asked. But yeah, so hopefully, I don't know. Did the signal get better? If you're on TikTok, somebody said it's choppy. Did the signal get better? If it is, let me know. But yeah, so when we get into this stuff, and we start talking about all these different things, you have to realize that what Yah has for you has to be greater than you, right? If you don't want to call it Yah, I believe one day you should. But that being said, even if you don't want to call it Yah, the Most High, His will, the spiritual thing, etc., regardless of what I'm saying, it still makes sense, right? No problem over there? Okay. So regardless, it's still, this part should make sense, which is you have to do something greater than you, right? I have something that I've been called to do that's greater than my family, so it supports not only my family, it supports community, right? Somebody can say, hey, Pastor Kofi, I need such and such because this is coming up and I'm low. And because we have something greater than myself, we got extra. All right, thank y'all, right? So now we got extra to be able to give, right? We have something that's greater than just, oh yeah, take care of 10 persons that come to an assembly on Sunday. So we have something greater than that. We have a mindset, we have a thought process, we have a calling that's greater than just only meeting up with persons who only agree with 100% of one thing, but don't make sure that they can actually still help somebody outside of their belief system. Doesn't mean that we give up our belief system to help anybody, but at the same time, we should be able to, especially if we're led by Holy Spirit, we should be able to make sure that we can be a bridge that can help persons to come from the world into the coming marvelous light. And thank y'all for the love. You see, so Joseph is a nourisher, but he says, I'm not just here to nourish. He said, you guys are sitting up here, you still thinking too small. He said, do you not realize, not only do I need to nourish you, I need to nourish your children, your little ones. And by doing this, and through doing this, he comforted them, and he spake kindly unto them. Their relationship with him, because of what they did, in their mind, they're still immature. They're still stuck on what they did to him, not realizing that he's a nourisher, right? He gives life not just to them, not just to himself, not just to his family, but to those around him, and to anybody of Israel. They told him, remember Israel, our father said, do this, do this, do this. How you doing, Brother Craig? And proud Americans already know. Thank y'all, moderators. We have a lot of issues today. So, verse 22, this tells us about Yosef. he dies. All right. So this is now we're ending. So we've ended here, right? We talked about throughout Genesis. We laid out the stuff for the family. We've talked about what's happening. We've seen Judah earlier, where Judah's going to start heading on to, so we can see where the throne and all that's going to be as far as the flesh, where the throne resides. But now we've ended with, so we started off with the whole world being created. We started off with our seminal head, first seminal head of Adam, or Adam, really our first one is Yechava, but our first seminal head in the flesh, Adam, right? And then we've gone all the way through that, through Shem, or through Noah, and then through Shem. No, sorry, Adam to Enoch, then Enoch to Noah to Shem. I'm skipping over some names. And Shem to Hebrew, going through all the way to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, right? Jacob becomes Israel. We've seen where Judah's going to go. But now we're also dealing with, so that deals with Leah, right? And so Judah and all them, we're going through Leah. But then we're seeing Rachel, we're seeing the story as far as Jacob. And also, interestingly enough, Joseph. And we're also seeing Joseph as far as Joseph and his attachment to Kemet, which is problematic. Also to remember that Ishmael has an attachment to Kemet. So we're seeing some interesting things happen. Right, but verse 22. And Joseph, Yosef, dwelt in Kemet, dwelt in Mizraim. He and his father's house, so all of the family of Israel, and Joseph, right, lived 110 years. He lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children, the third generation. So the third generation, Ephraim. Remember, Ephraim is going to be the one that's going to replace Dan. Ephraim meaning double the ashes, double the fertility. So Ephraim saw twice as much. Through Ephraim, he's basically saying I've seen twice as much. You said there's a story of Israel, an allegory. So some persons look at this allegorical. I look at it as actually 100% factual, including even stuff that we're starting to find even more of. The persons forget there's already been evidence, not just with Dead Sea Scrolls, but even going back further with Israel and things of that nature. But yeah, we go back even further now, especially things that were taken out of the so-called Bible before the Bible was written. There were other things there, but we've seen, in the 1990s, them dig up artifacts as far as those who were into Baal, but also recognize that Israelites were there. We see Israel talked about in Kemet, on walls that go back to the same time where the book of I think it's Second Chronicles or First Chronicles is written, and it says the same thing, that in those days Israel had no kings. It's the same thing the Bible says out of that passage. So we have a lot of different things to talk about. If we know that in China they believe in Noah, they believe in Shem, Ham, and Japheth, they believe in the flood. There's a whole bunch of persons, but some persons look at this allegorical. So what I tell persons is, even if you're still in a place where you think of it only as allegorical and not, factual, still look at it as being contextual, right? If we get the context, even if you think of it as being mythical, make sure that you get the context of it, because as we were saying earlier, today persons still use those things. But there's tons of evidence that are there, especially even others. We forget after the Bible, so-called Bible is finished, in Revelation, we can look at historians like Flavius Josephus, who talk about Israel, he himself being an Israelite. We mentioned Oluwada Equiano. We mentioned, we can look at Hannibal. We can look at Hannibal, we talked about earlier with Carthage. We can look at the Moors and what some of the Moors believe. Moors are catch-all, but Moors are a bunch of so-called black persons with different beliefs. We can look at what the beliefs are there. We can look at Second Esdras, chapter 13, verses 40 through 45, and look up the land of Asherah and find that that's what Christopher Columbus was sent to find. He brought a Hebrew interpreter with him over to what we now call Haiti, right? And Dominican Republic. So that's what they were looking for, were Israelites that were there. And the Israelites, according to even Dr. Yvonne von Sertima, tell us that those Israelites that were there said that they were familiar not only with West African, but also Israelites that had been scattered to West Africa, and they had the same exact weaponry, made with the same exact metallurgy to the percentage. So we have a whole bunch of evidence contrary to when persons say none of these persons existed. These persons are plastered and put all over the places. Even with stuff like Moses, even though we have stuff that proves to us that there is a Moses, there is a belief in the Moses that goes back before the Bible, right? Even with different names that are given to persons who have Moses written in different dialects. We also know that even sometimes the absence of Moses being in certain places in Kemet actually proves as evidence of him as well. What do we mean? Because we know that when persons forget, there was what 40. Some people will say 100 plus, but there were what 40 something dynasties. If we talk about just Kemetic and Cushitic, right? If we get into Egyptian, which is Greek, and we get into Arabic and all that stuff, we have more. But we're talking about actual dynasties that were Kemetic or African or from Cush and Kemet. Remember, Cush is basically the big brother of Kemet. If you think Cush and Kemet, think like England and the United States of America. That's the same relationship that they have. You'll discover that every time you had dynasties come in, or if the dynasties even lost, a lot of persons would either cancel out or cross out or rewrite even over the carving, recarve in, like persons would change the tattoos, they would change what was on the walls to show that they didn't get defeat. So Ramses, who was supposed to be the same pharaoh that's around the time of Moses, Ramses II especially, is somebody that we know lost a lot of different things, lost a lot of battles. We have evidence of it in other places outside of where they have the hieroglyphs that we would look for mainly in palaces. We have other evidence that shows that he actually did a lot of losing, and even though he built up a lot of stuff, there's also a lot of stuff that didn't go his way. So anytime something didn't go his way, he actually canceled it out. He just had it rewritten or had it demolished and put something else in its place. So we have a lot of evidence, even the things that are not. Now, I would grant you that's a little further elite than what some of the other stuff I've mentioned, but that's why I mentioned that stuff first. But you start putting stuff together, you can see very clearly, especially now that we have the scrolls and everything to go along with it that we've been finding for centuries. For me, it's not an allegory just by itself. But even that being said, if you still are looking at this as an allegory only, I would say still look at it within the culture of the person that wrote it and make sure that you're still getting the actual value of the allegory if that's what you believe it to be. And I think if you get the actual value of it, at some point it actually becomes hard to think about it only as allegorical. But that's for your personal development wherever you might be. Great question though. Verse 22. So Joseph dwelt in Kemet at his father's house, and Joseph lived 110 years. Verse 23. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children, the third generation. Right. So this is the children's children. This is the grandchildren. And by the way, we're supposed to make sure that we have a mindset to take care of our children's children. Matter of fact, I try to figure out how to always make sure I take care of my children's children. My pleasure, right? I try to make sure I can take care of my children's children. If I can take care of my great-grandchildren, that's the goal. If my great-grandchildren are taken care of, then my grandchildren are taken care of, right? If my grandchildren are taken care of, my children are taken care of. If my children are taken care of, then I'm definitely taken care of, right? So that's the goal that we're getting to, is that our grandchildren will be straight. If our grandchildren are straight, some people might even say, well, you're not sure if your grandchildren are straight, then aren't they also supposed to take care of their grandchildren? And I would say they need to make sure they put some work in as well, but I would make sure, yes, that they have a great start, a great inheritance, so that when they reach adulthood, they'll be able to take care of it. Even if we're behind on it, the goal is fine. Make sure your children get better so that your grandchildren will be taken care of. That's where you are, right? If you just starting this journey, you're like, hey, I'm 75, I'm 60, I'm 40. You talking about taking care of this, taking care of that. I still don't know this, that, whatever. I'm just getting on my feet as far as this knowledge, or just getting on my feet as far as, building the trust, getting the LLC, getting the grant writer, trying to figure out the land, trying to do all this stuff with that. I'm just learning this stuff. I'm just learning how to make sure that I can, get a certain type of will, and that will can be used for generations, and I can stay alive 20, 30, 40 more years and stay along healthy enough, I can keep putting back into different types of wills and having so many of them, and nobody can touch them, and I can even have it set up to where people, if they do want to touch them, can't touch them to a certain age, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, you're just learning, so fine. Start where you are, right? Today could be a better day than it was yesterday. It don't have to be the same. I tell you that from personal experience. There's a lot of stuff. Somebody will suddenly do something. I'm in the middle right now of getting some homework assignments done as far as furthering myself as far as sovereignty and things like that. And and somebody will say, do that, and I don't know what they're talking about, or I doubt it. Fine. Least I can do is study it to make sure that I know how it works. The day after that, implement something. The day after that, fill out paperwork for something. If you fill it out wrong, okay, you fill it out wrong doesn't mean you can't fill it out again. Like, just make today better than it was yesterday. Make that your goal, right? But Joseph saw Ephraim's children, the third generation. He was able to live long enough to see them. So he saw the children of the son who was adult, who showed that he could get twice as much, right? From him losing twice as much, he was able to get everything back, the recompense, if you will. He also saw Machir, the son of Manasseh, right? And were brought up upon Joseph's knees. So Joseph had his grandchildren on the knee. He got to play with them and everything. Praise God. Right? His story ends very well, not just only for riches, but also with his family. And bearing his father and taking care of Israel, the Israelites at this point, right? Verse 24, and Joseph said to his brethren, he said to his brothers, the same one he had to tell, forbid all this stuff. I'm not Yah, I'm not trying to get vengeance. If we're going to be together, I've got to forgive, but I've also got to build up trust, and I've got to let you guys know that you can trust me. He says to his brothers in verse 24, I died. So wait a minute. So he went through all this stuff and died earlier than some of his brothers. He says to them, I die. And Elohim will surely visit you and bring you out of this land unto the land from which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and Jacob. So watch this. Israel said this was going to happen. He said, I got to be buried there. He said, this is not where Yah met me. This is not where Yah wants me to focus. But then he says, Yahasab, right? Yahasab Asar, Yahadashab Asar, or Joseph says what Jacob said. Joseph says what Israel said. Same thing. He says, look, we had all this, we built up this and that, but no, this is not where we're supposed to be. Even though Yah did so many great things to me, even though he did it, remember, Joseph was not supposed to be sent here. His brothers sent him there on some foolishness, on some stuff, and they tried to put him in something that he didn't belong in. They end up being taken care of, but they had to follow the blessing of Joseph, or Joseph was not there. But Joseph was saying, hey, you know, the ultimate blessing is still where our father is, where we buried our father. We buried our father where? Back in Canaan, which would become where? Israel. So our father, our source, Israel, it went back to where heaven's supposed to be earth. Genesis 28. And at some point, God's going to take us there and watch this. And Joseph took an oath. Remember what an oath is. If you've never heard this before, an oath is a promise before a deity. So be careful when you make oaths. Right? Those of you who are into these sororities and fraternities and all this stuff, when you make an oath, it's before a spirit, a deist, an Elohim, a God even, etc., right? But they made an oath, right? This oath is a sabah, I believe, or a shabach, right? Right? Shabach or a shabach, right? But it's a shabach or a shabach, right? This shabach is what? Is to swear or adjure, right? And let me make sure, because let me see, lawful definition of adjure. So adjure in legal context means solemnly command or charge someone. It is under the threat of a penalty to do something. It implies a strong and serious request or demand, emphasizing the importance of the action being requested. So it is a strong thing that is said. It's a lawful thing. It's a lawful decree. If we say this, we're going to do it no matter what, right? And it's under a penalty. If we don't do this, then something comes on the other end as far as penalty, as far as consequence, as far as negative lawful consequence. So they made an oath. What was the oath that they made? The children of Israel made this oath with Joseph. Joseph making this oath, going back to an oath that was made by his father Israel. What is this oath that the Israelites took? Elohim will surely visit us, and shall carry us, and shall carry up his bones from hence. The Most High will visit us and will carry his bones physically, but also will carry my family. Will carry even the things that seem like they're dead and are separated from Israel, will be carried from where they are and shall come back. And really, in a certain sense, Ezekiel 37, these dry bones shall live. There's an oath. Verse 26, so Joseph, he gave up the ghost. He died. 110 years old. They embalmed him. And he was put in a coffin in Kemet. So he was embalmed, had to wait a 40-day period. They would have had a 70-day period of mourning him. And then he would have been put in a sarcophagi. Which, by the way, you'll find sarcophagi in Israel. Another thing of being able to prove. At least there's something to this, right? Even if you say it, like, that's why I said, eventually you start listening to these allegories and looking at the culture and reading it correctly. And eventually you start saying some of this stuff we can't We can't just keep saying it's random, right? Now, when you go to Exodus, even though it's the last one, but I just want to throw this in here, we're done. That's all of chapter 50. Thank you so much. We finally made it through all these chapters, all these verses. We've been doing this since February 7th. We finally went over this. We know the names now. We know what names mean. All the way back to Adam, all the way through really Anan, and even the generation of after Joseph. After Judah and Tamar, and we know what's going on even with the third generation of Israel going through Joseph and Asenath, and Joseph and Asenath having Manasseh and Ephraim, all these different things, right? We've gone through. Here's the last thing I just want to add from Exodus chapter 1. Exodus chapter 1 will start off with a reminder, right? This scroll will start off with a reminder. This Shemot, or Exodus, as we call it, right, we'll start off with a reminder of the children of Israel. Once again, because this is not written for everybody, it's written to who? The children of Israel, whether you be grafted in, adopted in, physically, spiritually, emotionally, etc., psychologically, soul ties, etc., right? It starts off with saying, these are the children of Israel. It tells us, it reminds us that Joseph dies. I think it's Exodus chapter 1, verse 6. And then after that, it makes it a point to start saying that yes, we were fruitful, we multiplied, we increased. All the promises of God that were said were there. But then it says after Joseph died, it said there arose a new king. That means that there's a new dynasty. This is really saying not just there arose a new king, there arose a new dynasty, right? And at this point, this dynasty says, I don't recognize what you guys had and the promise that you had with them. He said, and I can't recognize it because you guys are dealing with these different things. Matter of fact, verse 11, if you go to Exodus 1:11, it says, therefore, because of this, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens, and they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. Okay? This city named after Ramses. Now, if you know about Ramses the first, I'm just giving you something you can go down this. I don't think we're going through Exodus, at least not anytime soon. You know, who knows what Holy Spirit says. But Ramses, right, if you know about Ramses the first was not even of nobility. Ramses the first was a great builder, and he was somebody who rose up in the ranks. He was extremely intelligent. He was almost even like a, what's his name? Imhotep. He was almost like an Imhotep of his fame and fortune and his intelligence, all these different things that he did for his community, right? But what happens with Ramses is that, so Ramses comes in from a whole other dynasty. When you get to Ramses, it's a whole different dynasty. So by the time you start talking about down the road, all these persons and everything, they're coming through the family, the bloodline of Ramses. So you got to realize after Joseph dies, when it says there was a new king, it's not just talking about a particular person, it's talking about there was a whole other dynasty that pops up. And when this whole other dynasty pops up, this is where we start seeing Moses and them coming through the fray of a whole other dynasty that had said, hey, the children of Israel, the children who are living in Goshen, right, and the persons who had the power, who come from a place to where Joseph used to be second in command. Now Joseph is dead, right? But watch this. I need you to catch this. And this is what we're even dealing with in modern kingdom today. Joseph is dead. What happens, right, when kings, right, a new kingdom pops up, and you have persons of the old family around? Those persons of the old family, a person would say, well, we don't want a king from a new family. We already have persons from the old family. We should just let them go ahead and keep ruling. If they're the ruling class, if they're the ruling elite, why would somebody else come through? And so what happens is kings, right, and even queens, try to take and kill off those persons of other families to ensure that they'll still have access to the throne, and that their children won't have anybody that could possibly come up on theirs. So you have the old Pharaoh and the old God, and you also have these Israelites who, even though they've lost the throne as far as being second in command, they're still respected in that high regard. So you have to get rid of that. What do? They make them slaves, right? They give them taskmasters, they give them burdens, and they make it hard for them to even be looked at. Remember, because if we just go back before Joseph, even though they respected Abraham and Isaac, before Joseph, they hated and despised shepherds, period. The shepherd kings and even the shepherds that were Israelites. So remember, Israel used that to their advantage to even get the land of Goshen. So, so being who you are, right, causes our enemy to despise you, and you got to recognize that and be ready for persons who don't necessarily like you because you are who you're called to be. All right, so that's it for Genesis 50. We made it through. I thank you all. I apologize. Once again, we had another day of it taking a minute to get started properly, but we're back on track. We'll be back on tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll do the overview, and then we'll do our podcast, and then everything that's on our list for the day we'll do. The following, and then on Sunday and Monday we'll do Q&A, but just strictly for Barashayat, or strictly for the book of Genesis that we've gone through to be able to speak on things. Now, if it's connected to Genesis in some way, maybe we can figure out a way to connect it. And you can really ask whatever you like, but I'm just going to make it a point to be like, if it doesn't really connect, or unless, we just have zero questions being asked, I probably won't be able to focus on that this Sunday and Monday. But tomorrow we'll do another overview. We'll just do an overview real quick, and then we'll do Sunday, Monday Q&A, and then we should be officially done with the book of Genesis. And really, you guys probably won't hear from me, at least on the live sessions. You won't hear from me until probably the following Monday. So I thank you all. Thank you, family. I appreciate you. I hope that all is well with you, and hope that you and your house are doing well. We made it through. It's been February 7th till today is August 8th or August 9th. So we put in our time and diligence, 6 straight months, grinding, and you have plenty of information. Once again, feel free to look up all the stuff on YouTube and the playlist called Barashayat. You should be able to find that. You should look up the playlist on VBS if you want more information on the names. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. We honor you. I honor your time. Keep an eye on the calendar. We might try to do a watch party tomorrow. Depends on the timing of everything, but we might try to do a watch party tomorrow. So if we do one, it'll probably be around 12. Probably only do like an hour and a half, 12 to 1 or 12 to 1:30. And I'm thinking we might watch so you can have the babies on this one too if you like. We might watch Joseph, the story of Joseph. I forget what they call it. Whatever, the story of Joseph, there was a cartoon that picked up a lot of steam and is somewhat famous, but we're going to talk about how we're going to watch it for a few weeks in a row, probably on Saturdays, and when we'll watch it, we'll stop it a lot and have conversation about what they're actually saying and what they're showing and why some of the stuff is off. So that'll probably be our next watch party. If you want to invite the Prince of Egypt, the Prince of Egypt was the one about Moses. But whichever one's about Joseph, right? There's one about Joseph. Maybe it's called the Prince of Egypt too. I'm not sure. Or maybe that's called the Prince of Egypt and Joseph. The one about Moses called something else. But we'll watch that one, and we'll come back and we'll have conversation right there. Now that will be on Clapper. So if you don't have the Clapper app, spelled just like back in the day, clap on, clap off, that's spelled the same way with the Clapper app. Now we use that because we don't have to worry about anybody trying to take us down. So we'll be on there, and let's say, well, you know what? Let's say 12:30, right? We'll work on it. It might be more like 12:15. Anyways, just look for the announcement to go out. 12. It'll probably be 12:15. The children stop at 12, so we'll probably make it like 12:15. We'll go 12:15 to about 1:30, and we'll have conversation, and we'll go over that for some weeks, just watching it and discussing it and different things like that. So anyway, love you all to life. You all take care. We're not going to do a typical shout out once again with the music and everything per se. Well, you know what? We might do a little something with the music playing today. It's a little less quiet. So if you're on TikTok, just hang around for a second and we'll do our shout out together where you guys can see all that stuff on. And we appreciate you. Thank you to all the children and all the parents that have been faithful to all the classes. Thank you again for last week for VBS. Keep checking out for your stuff as far as things that are coming in the mail, so you guys can see that stuff popping up. But I'm going to go ahead and take my leave for the moment and for today. Thank you all for being on with us live or watching later on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. We appreciate you all. We shall see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully we'll see you this evening. Yesterday, I apologize I couldn't make it on yesterday. I tried to make sure our leadership knew that I was busy By the way, ministerial staff, we're going to have our meeting on Monday evening. This upcoming Monday, we'll have a meeting on Monday to make up for today because we still don't have our first meeting of the month. So it'll probably be around 6:45 or so, but I'll send that out to you guys as well. But Tadaf Mashabakeh, thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. I honor you. We look forward to seeing you guys, and hopefully you're learning and growing through this. If you're somebody who is trying to send this to somebody in another language too, by the way, I try to make sure that I put this stuff out so that you guys can, do the captioning and stuff, closed captioning. If you can do closed captioning on these videos, you can actually change the language as well. So if there's somebody who's, I'm not ready to go in at least. I probably could a little bit, but I don't feel comfortable enough speaking Spanish yet to probably do a lot more Spanish speaking, but I'm gonna try to be more involved in that by the end of the year. And maybe put some French terms out there by the end of the year as well. Maybe even from time to time, depending on when we have certain meetups, I'll have some persons that might, translate with me and for me every once in a while too. But in the meantime, feel free to take this stuff and look at the closed caption and go on there and just put it in a different language, and that way you can share this with others as well. And if they share stuff, if they send even questions in their language, I can always translate them virtually or through technology, and I can make sure that I can still answer. They just have to translate what I'm saying. All right, but love you all to life. You all take care. How you doing, Casey? But blessings to each and every one of you. We appreciate you. For those who are going to stay with us on TikTok, we'll do a shout out in a little bit. You guys know how to do that, so if you've never done one, just follow somebody's example. But thank you all. I appreciate you. I'm going to take my leave for today. I plan on seeing you guys this evening, so prayerfully you can join us on Kofi_42 on TikTok or on YouTube at 8 p.m. New York time for a nice little message in the evening. And if I don't see you, already Shabbat Shabbat. But if you're using the Gregorian calendar, I'll see you at Shabbat again this evening. And prayerfully we'll see you then. I thank you all. I appreciate you all. I hope that you guys are doing well. How you doing, Wonderful Whispers? I hope you guys continue to do well and be great, and do righteously. And know that God's with you. And if I don't see you earlier, once again, or later, early Shabbat Shalom to you. And tomorrow, just know that we'll be on schedule. 8 a.m. New York time live session, 10 a.m. Podcast, 11 a.m. New York time for Shabbat school for the babies, 12:15 p.m. New York time for the watch party, 7 p.m. London time for those in England, and then 7 p.m. New York time for mirror session. All right, so love you all to life. You all take care. Stick around on TikTok or come over to TikTok if you want to be part of the shout out. But to everybody who's on with us, thank you so much. And we give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Alma. And remember, as always, family, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shabbat Shalom, or Shalom, Vav. Talk to you soon. Peace.